Section 64 of Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann, translated by Helen Tracy Lowe Porter. This Librivox recording is in the public domain, read by Bruce Peary. Part 7, Chapter 1. A christening in Broad Street. Everything is there that was dreamed of by Madame Permaneder in the days of her expectancy. In the dining-room, the maid-servant, moving noiselessly so as not to disturb the services in the next room, is filling the cups with steaming hot chocolate and whipped cream. There are quantities of cups crowded together on the great round tray with the gilded shell-shaped handles, and Anton the butler is cutting a towering layer cake into slices, and Mamselle Jungmann is arranging flowers and sweets in silver dessert dishes, with her head on one side and both little fingers stuck out. Soon the company will have seated themselves in the salon and sitting-room, and all these delicacies will be handed round. It is to be hoped they will hold out, since it is the whole family which has gathered here, in the broader, if not quite in the broadest, sense of the word. For it is, through the Overdyks, connected distantly with the Kistenmakers, and through them with the Mühlendorfs, and so on. One simply must draw the line somewhere. But the Overdyks are represented, and indeed by no less a personage than the head of the family, the venerable Dr. Caspar Overdyk, reigning burgomaster, more than 80 years old. He came in a carriage and mounted the steps, leaning on his staff and Thomas Buddenbrooks' arm. His presence enhances the dignity of the occasion, and beyond a question, this occasion is worthy of every dignity. For within, in the salon, there is a flower-decked small table, serving as an altar, with a young priest in black vestments and a stiff, snowy ruff like a millstone round his neck, reciting the service, and there is a great strapping, particularly well-nourished person, richly arrayed in red and gold, bearing upon her billowing arms a small something, half smothered in laces and satin bows, an heir, a first-born son, a Buddenbrook. Do we really grasp the meaning of the fact? Can we realize the thrill of that first whisper, that first little hint that travelled from Broad Street to Mengstrasse? Or Frau Permaneder's speechless ecstasy as she embraced her mother, her brother, and, very gently, her sister-in-law? And now, with the spring of the year 1861, he has come. He, the heir of so many hopes, whom they have expected for so many years, talked of him, longed for him, prayed to God, and tormented Dr. Grabo for him. At length he has come, and looks most unimposing. His tiny hands play among the gilt trimmings of his nurse's waist. His head, in a lace cap trimmed with pale blue ribbons, lies sidewise on the pillow, turned heedlessly away from the preacher. He stares out into the room, at all his relatives, with an old, knowing look. Those eyes, under their long lashed lids, blend the light blue of the father's and the brown of the mother's iris into a pale, indefinite, changeful golden brown. But bluish shadows lie in the deep corners on both sides of the nose, and these give the little face, which is hardly yet a face at all, an aged look, not suited to its 4 weeks of existence. But, please God, they mean nothing, for has not his mother the same? And she is in perfectly good health. And anyhow, he lives and is a son, which was the cause, 4 weeks ago, for great rejoicing. He lives, and it might have been otherwise. The consul will never forget the grip of good Dr. Grabo's hand as he said to him 4 weeks ago, when he could leave the mother and child, "Give thanks to God, my dear friend, there wasn't much to spare." The consul has not dared to ask his meaning. he put from him in horror the thought that his son, this tiny creature yearned for in vain so many years, had slipped into the world without breath to cry out, almost, almost, like Antonia's second daughter. But he knows that that hour, 4 weeks ago, was a desperate one for mother and child, and he bends tenderly over Gerda, who reclines in an easy chair in front of him, next his mother, her feet in patent leather shoes crossed before her on a velvet cushion. How pale she still is, and how strangely lovely in her pallor, with that heavy dark red hair and those mysterious eyes that rest upon the preacher in half-veiled mockery. Herr Andreas Prinksheim, Pastor Marianus, succeeded thus young to the headship of St. Mary's after old Cooling's sudden death. He holds his chin in the air and his hands prayerfully folded beneath it. He has short, curly, blonde hair and a smooth-shaven, bony face, with a somewhat theatrical range of expression, from fanatical zeal to an exalted serenity. He comes from Franconia, where he has been for some years serving a small Lutheran community among Catholics, and his effort after a clear and moving delivery has resulted in exaggerated mannerisms, an R rolled upon his front teeth, and long, obscure, or crudely accented vowel sounds. He gives thanks to God in a voice now low and soft, now loud and swelling, and the family listen. Frau Perminator, clothed in a dignity that hides her pride and her delight. Erika Grunlich, now almost 15 years old, a blooming young girl with a long braid and her father's rosy skin, and Christian, who has arrived that morning, and sits letting his deep-set eyes rove from side to side all over the room. Pastor Tiburtius and his wife have not shrunk from the long journey, but have come from Riga to be present at the ceremony. The ends of Sievert Tiburtius's long, thin whiskers are parted over his shoulders, and his small grey eyes now and then open wider and wider, most unexpectedly, and grow larger and more prominent till they almost jump out of his head. Clara's gaze is dark and solemn and severe, and she sometimes lifts her hand to a head that always seems to ache. But they have brought a splendid present to the Buddenbrooks, a huge brown bear stuffed in a standing position. A relative of the pastor's shot him somewhere in the heart of Russia, and now he stands below in the vestibule with a card tray between his paws. The Krugers have their son Jürgen visiting them. He is a post-office official in Rostock, a quiet, simply dressed man. Where Jakob is, nobody knows but his mother, who was an Overdyk. She, poor weak woman, secretly sells the household silver to send money to the disinherited son. And the ladies Buddenbrook are there, deeply rejoiced over the happy family event, which does not prevent Fifi from remarking that the child looks rather unhealthy, a view which the Frau Consul Bornstuving, and likewise Friederike and Henrietta, feel bound to endorse. But poor Clotilde, lean, grey, resigned, and hungry, is moved by the words of Pastor Prinksheim and the prospect of layer cake and chocolate. The guests not belonging to the family are Herr Friedrich Wilhelm Marcus and Sesame Weichbrot. Now the pastor turns to the godparents and instructs them in their duty. Justus Kruger is one. Consul Buddenbrook refused at first to ask him. "Why invite the old man to commit a piece of folly?" he says. "He has frightful scenes with his wife every day over Jacob. Their little property is slowly melting away. Out of pure worry he is even beginning to be careless in his dress. But you know what will happen. If we ask him, he will send the child a heavy gold service and refuse to be thanked for it." But when Uncle Eustace heard who was to be asked in his place, Stefan Kistenmacher had been mentioned, he was so enormously piqued that they had to ask him after all. The gold mug he presented was, to Thomas's great relief, not exaggeratedly heavy. "And the second godfather?" "It is this dignified old gentleman with the snow-white hair, high neckband, and soft black broadcloth coat with the red handkerchief sticking out of the back pocket, sitting here, bent over his stick, in the most comfortable armchair in the house. It is, of course, Burgomaster Dr. Uverdick. It is a great event, a triumph. Good heavens, how could it have come about? He is hardly even a relative. The Buddenbrooks must have dragged the old man in by the hair. In fact, it is rather a feat, a little intrigue planned by the consul and Madame Permaneder. At first it was merely a joke, born of the great relief of knowing that mother and child were safe. "A boy, Tony," cried the consul. "He ought to have the burgomaster for godfather." But she took it up in earnest, whereupon he considered the matter seriously and agreed to make a trial. They hid behind Uncle Eustace, and got him to send his wife to her sister-in-law, the wife of Uverdick the lumber dealer. She accepted the task of preparing the old father-in-law. Then Thomas Buddenbrook made a visit to the head of the state and paid his respects, and the thing was done. Now the nurse lifts up the child's cap, and the pastor cautiously sprinkles 2 or 3 drops out of the gilt-lined silver basin in front of him upon the few hairs of little Buddenbrook, as he slowly and impressively names the names with which he is baptizing him. Justus Johann Caspar. Follows a short prayer, and then the relatives file by to bestow a kiss upon the brow of the unconcerned little creature. Teresa Weichbrot comes last, to whom the nurse has to stoop with her burden, in return for which Sesame gives him 2 kisses that go off with small explosions, and says between them, "You good child." 3 minutes later the guests have disposed themselves in salon and living-room, and the sweets are passed. Even Pastor Prinksheim, the toes of his broad shiny boots showing under his black vestments, sits and sips the cool whipped cream off his hot chocolate, chatting easily the while, and wearing his serene expression, which is most effective by way of contrast with his sermon. His manner says, as plainly as words, "See how I can lay aside the priest and become the jolly ordinary guest." He is a versatile, an accommodating sort of man. To the Frau Consul he speaks rather unctuously; to Thomas and Gerda, like a man of the world; and with Frau Permaneder he is downright jocose, making jokes and gesturing fluently. Now and then, whenever he thinks of it, he folds his hands in his lap, tips back his head, glooms his brows, and makes a long face. When he laughs, he draws the air in through his teeth in little jerks. Suddenly there is a stir in the corridor. The servants are heard laughing, and in the doorway appears a singular figure come to offer congratulations. It is Grobleben. Grobleben, from whose thin nose, no matter what the time of year, there ever hangs a drop which never falls. Grobleben is a workman in one of the consul's granaries, and he has an extra job, too, at the house, as boots. Every morning early he appears in Broad Street, takes the boots from before the door, and cleans them below in the court. At family feasts he always appears in holiday attire, presents flowers, and makes a speech in a whining, unctuous voice, with the drop pendant from his nose. For this he always gets a piece of money, but that is not why he does it. He wears a black coat, an old one of the consul's, greased leather top boots, and a blue woolen scarf round his neck. In his wizened red hand he holds a bunch of pale-coloured roses, which are a little past their best and slowly shed their petals on the carpet. He blinks with his small red eyes, but apparently sees nothing. He stands still in the doorway, with his flowers held out in front of him, and begins straightway to speak. The old Frau Consul nods to him encouragingly, and makes soothing little noises. The consul regards him with one eyebrow lifted, and some of the family, Frau Perminator, for instance, put their handkerchiefs to their mouths. "I be a poor man, your honour and ladies and gentlemen, but I've a feeling hert, and the happiness of my master comes home to me, it do, seein's he's always been so good to me, and so I've come, your honour and ladies and gentlemen, to congratulate the Herr Consul and the Frau Consul and the whole respected family from a full hert, and that the child may prosper, for that they desarve from God and man. For such a master as Consul Buddenbrook there aren't so many. He's a noble gentleman, and our Lord will reward him for all." "Splendid, Grobleben. That was a beautiful speech. Thank you very much, Grobleben. Who are the roses for?" But Grobleben has not nearly done. He strains his whining voice and drowns the consul out. "And I say, the Lord will reward him and the whole respected family. And when his time has come to stand before his throne, for stand we all must, rich and poor, and one'll have a fine polished hardwood coffin, and t'other an old box, yet all on us must come to Mother Earth at the last. Yes, we must all come to her at the last, to Mother Earth, to Mother—" "Oh, come, Grobleben, this isn't a funeral, it's a christening. Get along with your Mother Earth." "These be a few flowers," concludes Grobleben. "Thank you, Grobleben, thank you. This is too much. What did you pay for them, man? But I haven't heard such a speech as that for a long time. Wait a minute. Here, go out and give yourself a treat in honour of the day." And the consul puts his hand on the old man's shoulder and gives him a thaler. "Here, my good man," says the Frau Consul, "and I hope you love our blessed Lord?" "I be loving him from my heart, Frau Consul, that's the holy truth." And Grobleben gets another thaler from her, and a third from Frau Perminator, and retires with a bow and a scrape, taking the roses with him by mistake, except for those already fallen on the carpet. The burgomaster takes his leave now, and the consul accompanies him down to his carriage. This is the signal for the party to break up, for Gerda Buddenbrook must rest. The old Frau Consul, Tony, Erika, and Mamsell Jungmann are the last to go. "Well, Ida," says the consul, "I have been thinking it over. You took care of us all, and when little Johann gets a bit older, he still has the monthly nurse now, and after that he will still need a day nurse, I suppose. But will you be willing to move over to us when the time comes?" "Yes, indeed, Herr Consul, if your wife is satisfied." Gerda is content to have it so, and thus it is settled. In the act of leaving, however, and already at the door, Frau Perminator turns. She comes back to her brother and kisses him on both cheeks, and says, "It has been a lovely day, Tom. I am happier than I have been for years. We Buddenbrooks aren't quite at the last gasp yet, thank God, and whoever thinks we are is mightily mistaken. Now that we have little Johann, it is so beautiful that he is christened Johann. It looks to me as if quite a new day will dawn for us all." End of section 64.